Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the roundtable titled SAARC is Dead, Long Live SAARC, Reviving South Asian Regionalism, organized by BIPSS in collaboration with Dhaka Tribune. The moderators for today are BIPSS President, Major General A&M Muniruzzaman and Mr. Zafar Sobhan, editor of Dhaka Tribune. The panelists consist of Mohammad Tawhid Hassan, Ms. Aisha Kabir, and Dr. Marufa Akhtar. I would like to request the moderators to carry on with the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all of you. Some of you may be suffering lack of sleep from yesterday's game, but nevertheless, we want to start slightly on time. The title of today's deliberation is absolutely apt because South Asia as a region is perhaps one of the least integrated. It is one of the most populous regions of the world, with some major powers habiting this space, including two major nuclear powers, a region with a history of conflict. Yet the region has been least integrated and lacks all forms of cooperation as of today. The very concept, the embryonic ideas of South Asian regionalism and cooperation first was articulated indirectly in some manner by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman while he was addressing a rally in Kolkata. But the very concept of SAARC was mooted by Bangladesh by President Ziaur Rahman. So Bangladesh can take the proud privilege of a country that gave the concept of SAARC. Yet today, after many years, we find that SAARC is no longer functioning. Some say that it is dead, some say it's in coma, but the fact remains that it is not functioning. We have all the functionaries of SAARC in place. We have an excellent functioning secretariat in Nepal, in Kathmandu. Yet, the potential of SAARC has not been realized as the founding fathers had the vision of SAARC. The reason being that SAARC is a victim of the hyphenated relationship between India and Pakistan. The biggest member of the organization has never taken a positive view of this organization, and therefore, SAARC has not been able to function. One of the reasons that ASEAN does function is because the largest member of that organization was magnanimous enough and realistic enough to accept the reality of the ground and level the asymmetry that exists in that region. But in South Asia, the largest member has never accepted the asymmetric positioning of members of the region. So therefore, it has never taken off, and whenever it took off, it limped again. Yet when I was going through some of the achievements of the organization, I see that SAARC has really achieved a lot. As a matter of fact, SAARC in many ways was ahead of its time in identifying some of the key areas of cooperation. For example, the SAARC Regional Convention on Suppression of Terrorism was enacted as early as 1987, way before the UN enacted the UN Conventions on Counterterrorism. SAARC had its Convention on Cooperation of Environment in April 2010, way before environment and climate change was top of the agenda on the global agenda. So SAARC did see the potential for regional cooperation as it manifests in some of the key areas of cooperation. Yet today, we have a regional body comprising initially of 7 members, and with the addition of Afghanistan, now the membership has gone up to 8. And we have 9 observer countries, including Australia, China, European Union, Iran, Japan, Mauritius, Myanmar, South Korea, and United States. So 8 member states and 9 observer countries. It also has 5 specialized bodies, and they are in existence and they function. It also has a number of regional centers spread across the region, which functions very effectively in certain key areas of their functionaries. But the fact remains that the main engine of SAARC, which is the SAARC Summit, or the meeting of the heads of governments and states, has not taken place after the last convention, last summit that was held in Kathmandu in 2014. The 2016 summit, or the 19th summit of SAARC, which was to be held in Islamabad, was cancelled because of the unwillingness of some key member countries to attend that summit. And since then, it has never taken off. So it is our intention today to find out what has gone wrong and what we are missing out and what should be done. The lack of a regional platform or regional cooperation body in South Asia has also delegated South Asia to a status that it becomes somewhat irrelevant in the international system. Whereas regional bodies like ASEAN has taken precedence in most of the international forums and most of the international platforms as a representative of a large part of Asia. Yet South Asia, which is the most populous part of this region, has become quite irrelevant. But the fact remains, as Aisha Kabir will later explain to you, there is no substitute for SAARC. It is the only all-Asian, all-South Asian or pan-South Asian regional body that we have got, and it is imperative that we make it function. With that introduction, I will now go back to our very esteemed panelists to give their comments and remarks before we open the floor for an open discussion. I would also like to mention that we have the privilege of having Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Chaudhry, the former advisor for foreign affairs in the government of Bangladesh, who was involved in the initial work of the formation of SAARC as a diplomat in the Foreign Office. So we'll also hear from him as we open the floor. But first of all, I would like to go back to Mr. Tawhid Hussain, the former Foreign Secretary, to give his comments. Tawhid, you have the floor for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I would start with a quote from Mr. Muchkund Dubey, the former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, and of course, also a renowned scholar. He had visited Dhaka some years back, and then the journalist said,
asked him, do you think SAARC is dead? He said, well, it seems SAARC is dead, but don't yet bury it. It might resuscitate someday. So we have remained hopeful that it will come up again, but as of today, we do not see any indication. In fact, nobody speaks of SAARC. After a long time, General Munir has brought up this issue in a forum, but in the last few years, I haven't seen anyone speaking of SAARC at all. We have the Secretariat is functioning, as I said, that is functioning quite well. There are some programs, but 38 years since the foundation, and what we have in our hand to show to the people of this region, virtually nothing. The trade goes as usual, mostly on bilateral terms, although there is some FTA sort of thing. The major exports of many countries have not been covered by that. And then the free movement of people, nothing has happened. In fact, the size of the visa forms have grown during this time instead of becoming smaller. We have some institutions, for example, the SAARC Development Fund. It was founded in 2005, and then in the Sri Lanka summit, the headquarters was agreed to be set up in Bhutan. I think that was fine, although initially Bangladesh wanted to have the headquarters in Dhaka. But it has a total fund commitment of $43 million. Peanuts by any standard. And well, for Bhutan, maybe it's some money, but then the smallest economy of this region. But for others, the high-sounding probabilities and possibilities, and then $43 million in total fund commitment doesn't make much of a difference. I think the pivotal position of India is important in having anything to do with regionalism in this country, in this region. Actually, this region is unique in a way that all the countries have, except Afghanistan, which basically is a Central Asian country. All the countries have border with China, with India. None of them have border with each other. This is not the case in any other country, in any grouping in the world. This is also, I would say, very, very unique. And that makes a situation in which it's only India which can take it forward. And unless, and as General Munir has already indicated, that India has not done much to take this organization forward. So that way, I think it is reflected that because India is not doing much, or for example, the last summit was stopped at Indian behest, and that is the reality. So unless India comes up strongly in favor of regionalism, I don't think any regionalism is going to work, or that, well, long-lived SAARC is fine. We have a secretariat which is functioning, and we have some programs, some initiatives, but otherwise it will remain where it is unless India comes up. If we speak of regionalism, there are certain other initiatives also that have taken place in this region. For example, the SAGQ came up as a South Asian Growth Quadrennial, came up as a sub-regional initiative of SAARC. Look at it, what are the progress? Basically almost nothing. One good initiative was the BBIN Motor Vehicles Agreement. Even that is quite 7 years already gone, but we still don't see cars or trucks moving from one country to the other, except to India. In fact, the Nepalese trucks which carry goods for Bangladesh can come up to the border, but cannot enter Bangladesh because they do not have the permit to cross the Indian border into Bangladesh. So there is transshipment. Indian trucks can come into Bangladesh. So again comes up the question of India. BIPSS could have been an alternate, because BIPSS, slightly differing in opinion from General Munir, is that BIPSS could be really a regional cooperation area, connecting some countries of SAARC and some countries of ASEAN. But again, we have the, the situation in Myanmar, the Rohingya issue, and everything is again bogged down as far as this is this sub-regional or regional cooperation is concerned. We have the economic corridor called BCIM. There is virtually no communication that way, because nothing is happening from China to Bangladesh and India via Myanmar. So overall, if we look at it, what do we see? We see that all the initiatives, SAARC included, all the initiatives have somewhat been bogged down, and unless India comes up in a big way, nothing is going to happen. I would prefer that India at least gives a chance to the sub-regional cooperations coming up, if not at SAARC. SAARC, because of the relation of animosity between Pakistan and India, which I don't think in our lifetime or in the lifetime of many of the younger people present here is going to be resolved, because the India-Pakistan conflict has certain aspects which you don't see going to be resolved soon. What can be a possible takat between India and Pakistan? It's only conversion of the line of control into an agreed border that can lead to peace. Is that going to happen? I do not foresee. I do not foresee because of political reasons, not because of practical reasons. Practically, that would have been the ideal solution. But no Pakistani government can survive after saying that we accept this border, this LOC as a border, and equally, no Indian government, I believe, will survive such a commitment. Although both the governments, both the countries know it very well that they can never occupy the others, area controlled by others. There can be minor adjustments after some skirmishes, or that's a different thing. But then the target of, say, from Indian side of occupying the Pakistan-administered Kashmir is not going to happen, particularly because even if it is militarily possible for in an India-Pakistan conflict, which is also not possible in my opinion, China is involved. So China cannot allow India to occupy that part of Kashmir. Likewise, Pakistan doesn't have the means to occupy the Indian-administered Kashmir and go about it. So this is something that will never happen, and so Pakistan and India will not become friends or will not see eye to eye on regional cooperation and all. We should remember that initially there was resistance from both Pakistan and India. I'm sure Dr. Zafar Chaudhary will vouch for me, because India thought that it's ganging up of the other countries against India, and Pakistan thought that it is going to be some sort of Indian hegemonistic ambition. But of course, I would again say that I would again agree that it was Bangladesh's initiative and Bangladesh diplomacy that made possible the founding of SAARC at all. I don't see how Bangladesh can again take an initiative to actually bring up SAARC on the surface and allow it to start functioning. But I think the initiative will have to come from countries other than Pakistan and India, to make SAARC functional again. Will it be possible in near future? I am not very optimistic. But of course, as Muniruzzaman Dubey said, that we should not bury SAARC and hope that someday it will again resuscitate. I'll stop there. Thank you. I hope I have not crossed my time limit.
Thank you very much for your comments and remarks. Very rightly so, that if you echo the sentiment of the person you're quoting, Muniruzzaman Dubey, we firmly feel that we should still try and revive the concept of SAARC. And in this, I think Bangladesh should again be the lead in trying to make it work, because the concept was mooted by Bangladesh, and we owe our responsibility and commitment to the concept that we should make it work again. And with those remarks from Tawhid, I think I will now go to Aisha Kabir, the head of Prothomalo English. Aisha, you have the floor.
Thank you, General Munir, and good morning and assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. So, there was a time when SAARC was a buzzword in this region, in Bangladesh for sure, and in the region. It was something that was taken very positively, and I'm not talking about like at the government level even, right down to the people. There was something so positive about SAARC that it really became a buzzword. But the present state of SAARC is extremely unfortunate, because it's been reduced to virtually nothing. It still exists in name, but hardly in effect. So today, when we discuss about the forum, there's one question that looms large. Why SAARC? But I think already our two previous speakers, General Munir and Tawhid Hussain, from what they've said, I think the answer to why SAARC is why not? Because if we look at the basic objectives of SAARC, why was SAARC formed? Very basically because it aimed at an integration of the South Asian nations to undertake some collective efforts to achieve common objectives of regional stability and prosperity. So let me just briefly, very briefly, say what were the objectives of SAARC. One was like to promote the welfare of the people of South Asia, improve their quality of lives, to accelerate economic growth, social progress, cultural development in the region by providing all individuals the opportunity to live in dignity and to realize that to their full potential. To promote and strengthen collective self-reliance among the countries of South Asia, contribute to mutual trust, understanding, appreciation of one another's problems, very important, and to promote active collaboration, mutual assistance in economic, social, cultural, technical, and scientific fields, strengthen cooperation with other developing countries, strengthen cooperation among themselves in international forums on matters of common interest, cooperate with the international and regional organizations with similar aims and purposes. So these are some of the basic objectives of SAARC. Which one of these objectives can anyone disagree with? On theory, nobody can disagree with, because it's a win-win situation if we look at these objectives. If we dissect this, we'll see each and every objective is beneficial to each and every country of SAARC. But the fact remains that SAARC now has become dysfunctional. It's not dead, certainly not, but perhaps in a state of suspended animation. Now, we're talking about the revival of SAARC, long live SAARC. How can it be revived? Sure, it's certainly, we don't have the, any abracadabra or any magic lamp just to rub it and revive SAARC, but we can discuss and find out possible ways. I'm speaking here, I'm a journalist, so I'm speaking here not as a diplomat or academic, rather from a people's point of view, as peoples perceive it, since it is about people of this region. So how to activate SAARC all over again? And do we actually want to activate it? That's another question. Or do we want to just relegate it to oblivion? But before we search the answer to the questions, let us briefly touch on SAARC, such a vibrant forum. Let's see that why has it reached this state? Why has it become so dormant, such a vital, such a vibrant forum? Why has it become dormant? So there's a general understanding is that there's a very, very bluntly put with, I'm not a diplomat, so let me put it, what the people's perception is that what we feel in general is that the tenacious rivalry and tensions, bluntly put, the enmity between India and Pakistan is a major bottleneck to the successful manifestation of SAARC. These tensions have led to the cancellations of the regular SAARC summit, have relegated SAARC not just to the backbenchers, but into cold storage. But that seems a very, very basic, very simplistic answer to why is SAARC in this state. There's a very simple explanation, and it's not untrue. If two members of a family are so up in arms against each other, it's hardly plausible for the family to be functional as a unit. The family members separate, take sides, and the constructive unity is lost. And that enmity spills over and affects the entire family. And that's what's happened to SAARC. Then again, there's a matter of symmetry, a balance. But there's asymmetry in the region, a lack of symmetry in the region due to the sheer size of Indian economy, the stature in the international arena, its clout as a regional power. But, it has a great power, but to quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So does not India play that responsible role in the region? Does it play that responsible role, or does it act as a regional big brother? To SAARC, is there a sense of reluctance in India to, relinquish that role it has, the alpha male role, and be one of the crowd, and, be on par with the other 7 members? Those are questions that have been asked. So again, when I ask why SAARC, and the answer comes again, why not? Because there are other regional associations which Ambassador Tawhid Hussain has already touched on, because we've seen so many around the world, not just there's the European Union, Asian, BIMSTEC, and more so. And so we need that cooperation. We need that to engage in constructive cooperation for the betterment of all concerned, to give strength to the countries of the region, and give an international voice to the countries, to give clout, to promote a spirit of friendship, to ensure a win-win situation for all. Let me put it in simple terms. We have huge populations in this region, burgeoning populations. Bangladesh, how can we be constructively help each other? For example, Bangladesh has a large population. Now, this is a very simplistic way I'm putting it. But we're very proud because in Bangladesh, we have one of the most successful family planning programs, where even conservative villages are going and are very receptive about things which could be sensitive before, like contraceptives, our reproductive health inputs. Then our immunization program for children is exemplary, which other South Asian countries don't have. Even the COVID immunization, the vaccine, we were more successful than many countries. And the reason I'm saying this is that this is a way we could act as a role model to others, and even in microfinance. Then if you go to India, they had such a successful dairy project, their dairy program. It's a model for the world. Pakistan's textile industry, the footballs which are being played in the World Cup, made in Pakistan, though I think now China's got a step ahead. But there's so many things we can all share with each other. Nepal, and during times of crisis, there's so much we can exchange, exchange of technology, exchange of knowledge. There's no end to the cooperation. And even our failures, we talk about Sri Lanka, the situation it is, we are learning from their mistakes too. Now, one of the most important things I feel why we need SAARC or a regional body right now is because, especially after the Ukraine-Russian war, there's a feeling that, which globalization had taken over, was actually globalized, taken over the whole globe. Globalization was suddenly gone on the wane. Especially, it was going on the wane anyway, but with the Russia-Ukraine war, we've seen that it's been put into question. Because after that, particularly the Russian-Ukraine conflict has had a domino effect all over the world. It's caused fuel prices to soar, prices of other commodities, foreign exchange crisis, economic crisis, food crisis. So globalization is at a loss here. Financial transactions, shipments, communication is the globalized system, and that just was no longer feasible, and we are all bearing the brunt. So this is bringing home the realization and reviving the importance of regionalism. I'm not dismissing globalization, but a strong, constructive regional association would help us effectively deal with the impacts of the global crisis. So what is to be done, and what is the way ahead? There's only one way ahead, logically speaking. Working out the details is another matter, but there's only one way ahead, I would think, is to revive SAARC. Some may see BIMSTEC, the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multisectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, as an alternative. But over there's an absence of Pakistan, and that negates the South Asian unity and also lends further imbalance. So BIMSTEC has its own share of issues like the Rohingya crisis between Myanmar and Bangladesh, the refugee crisis between Bhutan and Nepal. So the scopes and objectives of BIPSS and SAARC are not one and the same. Therefore, BIPSS can be seen as complementary to SAARC in a regional integration, but not an alternative. And if we look at it objectively, no one is opposed to SAARC actually. Its elements in the certain governments of the region that may be opposed to it, and they've put the brakes on the progress. But the people want unity. They yearn for unity. Look how popular, again, I want to give a simplistic explanation. Look how popular Indian movies are in any of the countries of SAARC, even in Pakistan. Look how popular Pakistan singers are in India or the rest of the region. Look at the most popular tourist resorts of Nepal, Sri Lanka, even Bhutan. And I think we in Bangladesh have an epitome of the SAARC spirit in one person, and that is our singer Runa Laila. I mean, who doesn't love her in the region? So it just shows that the people are one. Yes, we all have we are proud of our separate nations, but we also have a strong South Asian identity. So let the people decide. Do the people have a choice? They don't really have a choice, actually, but if the elections in all of our countries are fair, if there's democracy in a true sense, if the people can have a chance at exerting their will and desire, SAARC will rise up again like a phoenix from the ashes, and this region will stand up proud on the global stage. Thank you.
Asha, I really appreciate and echo your sentiments of hope. I really hope it comes true someday. It is also important for us to know that South Asia for the first time brought the South Asian identity. The very concept of South Asia and its people identity as South Asians came with the concept of SAARC. So SAARC is not only a functional body, it's a question of a regional identity, which is also equally important. Both Tawhid and Aisha mentioned about BIPSS, but I'm personally of the opinion that these regional and sub-regional cooperation functionaries are important, but they are not a substitute for SAARC. For the reason that there is no single organization in the region that includes all 8 South Asian nations. BIPSS is a combination of South Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries. So therefore, it is not a right substitute for SAARC. Unless we can create or recreate a regional body that includes all 8 South Asian nations, SAARC is the only platform that we have, and it is important that it functions. So I will now go back to our third speaker. And our third speaker today is Dr. Marufa Akhtar. She is the head of the Department of Global Studies in IUB in the School of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. So Marufa, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir, and good morning to everyone. I think being a last speaker is the role of the last speaker is sometimes the burden comes to the person's shoulder in terms of time management. Also, all of them have spoken most of the topic. So let's focus. I would like to, being a student of international relations, I would like to start with the idea why states tend to make regional organization. They have already spoken about it, but the concept of regionalism may vary to context, but usually is a process in which countries that share geography with close proximity have some common interest, common history, which help them ultimately to achieve a mutually set goals. And ideas and interest of actors here are very much important for the outcome of any organizations. And these policy preferences of the state actually originated from their basic interest. I think all the speakers have emphasis on that interests are lacking in most of the cases in very much contentious issues. If you look at the data, like which is the hostility and friendship data, which is one of the data in Ganges Basin, they have said that this is the most conflictual region in the last 50 years. They have gone through multiple negotiations and conflict. So the good part is they went through negotiations. Maybe this is also a good sign that even if they are going through a long history of disputes, but negotiations may be possible. Maybe I would be very, very optimistic here, but I would like to tend, because today we are talking about how to revive. We have spoken a lot about why it is not working, what is the problem. We all know what is the problem. Maybe it's time very much to talk about how we can revive, especially as Aisha ma'am spoke it enough. Like, this is a crisis moment. The world is going to face multiple crises with the start of war, Ukraine war. So I would like to talk about the one concept that Volker, it's a German political scientist, talked about how international organization can emerge. I would like to point out this theory which they identified the three conditions: problem statement, cognitive community, and hegemonic conditions. The three conditions may lead to a emergence of a organization. So what is the problem statement? Let me emphasize on this, that international organization emerges when complex interdependencies push states into international cooperations to further common interest, which is problem conditions. And if we look into what is cognitive conditions, that is when there are the mere fact of the existence of the complex interdependencies themselves, but also on the realization that these interdependence lead to the problem which can only be overcome through cooperation with international organizations. The third condition is when a hegemonic state is willing to bear the cost of the creation of the organizations. Now, Riedberger showed that with the examples of different international organizations, including International United Nations, League of Nations, which is not anymore, but other international organizations, empirically it was proven, right? And now if we look into the SAARC, how the states can actually revisit their problem conditions, how the cognitive community across the South Asian region can collaborate on these issues. That is most important. So it's very much timely to explore the common interest and mutual point of cooperation. One issue could be water. I know this is a very contentious issue, but it can also be a future for cooperation. Discontinuity in sustainable water supply is one of the major problems in the riparian countries in the region. Lack of steady water supply in the dry season provokes these states to build larger water storage dams to conserve monsoon water, which ultimately impacted the other countries. The second example is that the huge potential for hydropower project. All the riparian countries are primarily interested in hydropower to minimize increased demands of electricity of domestic use, irrigation, flood regulation, and energy security. With such realization and the quest for a combined solution, the countries will be able to install interest into action, which is important prior to initiating any regional cooperation. The presence of cognitive community, I would like to put a more emphasis on this point. The purpose of the cognitive society is to enable states to envisage the value of solving the problem together, and will lobby for the specific perception. As a significant actor, will forward any progressive regional developmental agenda. There are also several successful examples across the world. One is Euphrates-Tigris initiative for cooperations, which bring Iraq, Syria, and Turkey and United States that has been emerged with an approach to promote sustainable cooperations. We can learn from the outside examples, so how to build this cognitive community. National and transnational NGOs are also playing effective roles in putting pressure on policy issues upon the government, and at the same time have impacts over the creation on public opinion in social issues, as Aisha also mentions what people want. So this cognitive community can also explore that options. They are yet to develop a combined voice in South Asia. Having said that, the cognitive community yet to have a combined voice here. It also creates hope to generate ideas of forming similar civil society movement in the areas of common river water sharing at the regional level. However, it is also important to consider the nature of the states in South Asia that apply despotic power to intervene into the spheres of the civil society as part of the state-led co-option process. This is also reflected in the structure of the SAARC, which is state-centric in nature. SAARC has limitations to accommodate non-state bodies as part of the multilateral cooperation framework. So in addition to this, the NGOs and civil society in South Asia dependent on external resources too. So despite such limitations, civil society have emerged in this South Asia as a crucial actor and a parallel force to the government in most of the South Asian countries. That gives us a hope. There is a high potential that of combined force of civil society, informed experts, epistemic community, and the multilateral bodies can form an effective cognitive community that aims to contribute in collecting and disseminating information among the South Asian countries, to let the people and government understand the nature of the problem and advocate for a workable solution of the crisis. Now the last point, hegemonic conditions. I know we are already talking about the asymmetric interstate relations between the South Asian countries are critical in exploring hegemonic conditions for potential cooperation. That discrepancies are reflected when a state's voice is projected in any policy matter and also determined by the behavioral pattern of states towards each other, and we have observed that. A positive leadership role of the countries by taking the issue-specific lead and sharing the cost of the cooperation might be the best alternative solutions of the problem. As we are already highlighted, the Dhaka, Bangladesh have initiated the and played a pivotal role for emergence of the SAARC. So why not issue-specific leaderships can be taken across the South Asian countries just to overcome that standstillness that we are facing at this moment. More importantly, the trust and faith India can achieve through its leadership role, they will help them to overcome the long-standing image crisis in the region. India's move from bilateral to multilateral cooperation has many positive implications in the region. We have seen parallel multilateral initiatives, sub-regional initiatives now at this moment. So the two big questions is now, considering this stillness of the SAARC, is it ripe to revisit the charter of the SAARC? And also the second questions, some of the speakers also brought up that are the other sub-regional initiatives hampering the future of SAARC? Here it will be my points, and instead I think South Asian countries have already pivoted to alternative regional and sub-regional organizations, whether they are successful or fail. This is another topic of discussions. But these initiatives fit actually the India's vision, which prioritize neighborhood first and its Act East policy. Hence, the hegemonic role of India plays fostering the regional cooperation under BIPSS banner is the key to the organizational success. So taking this example, we can also use that other member states in the SAARC, or both large and smaller powers, have their own interest and needs in both organizations. Some are the more distinct, while others try to read the context and act accordingly. But there may not be the optimal solutions, but technical collaboration between countries forming common interest and limited membership might lead to a cooperative environment for the future. So BIPSS offering opportunities for smaller states in the region. The idea of the promoting shared prosperity is feasible not only due to India's sheer desire to take the leading role in BIMSTEC, but also owing to its commitment to share center stage with smaller states. And this small initiative, this sub-regional initiatives can also be important for breaking the ice or building the trust among the countries, among the other South Asian countries. We shall not also forget, and this will be my last point, that we shall not forget that we are living in a reality which is completely a globalized world. States have come to appreciate that they can achieve a kind of a psychic comfort in collectivities through multiple memberships or multiple loyalties that can advance both local and global values without one distracting from other. A growing appreciation among these lines can only be explained by this above-mentioned development, this sub-regional cooperation, multilateral cooperations that we are talking about. So allegiance to multiple memberships is not surprising, but rather an outcome of fragmentation's world system in which issue-specific arrangements is obvious. And integration is not impossible within it, but fragmentation is also obvious. The development of multiple groups and understanding that local, national, and transnational affiliations need not to be mutually exclusive, but can complement each other. So we have to take this initiatives as a encouraging factor. And also I want to finish with the hope that we should not forget that South Asian countries are facing severe challenges in the terms of, will be facing severe challenges in the food security. So agriculture, climate change, energy cooperations, these are the areas where they can actually put more emphasis on. And we should not forget about the social issues, the people's well-being, especially the women empowerment issues. This can be another area where the South Asian countries can learn from each other share their knowledge. And also the other three aspects, like we should not forget the South Asia region shows economic promise. It has also rich reserve of water resources for hydroelectricity. And it also offers a pool of young human resources, talented between the age of 15 to 24, and also the emerging South Asian diaspora, we should not forget. These are the positive areas that we all should think about, how we can utilize this, and we can make this force in this good side into a force, and it can play a critical role in the future of SAARC. Thank you. I stop here.
Marufo, thank you for your deliberation. I especially appreciate the many practical examples and possibilities that you've explained to us in the ways how we can try to revive this regional body again. And many of them are implementable. Aisha also did mention that the SAARC is a concept which is rooted in people. So we must again go back to the people and maybe try bottoms up again instead of top to bottom. So I see that SAARC, beside engaging with governments, has a number of people-oriented activity. I'll just name a few. It has a SAARC Journalist Forum. It has a SAARC Chamber of Commerce and Industry Forum. There is South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation in Law, Association for Lawyers Organization. There is South Asian Federation of Accountants. There is South Asia Foundation. There is a Foundation for SAARC Writers and Literatures. There is also a South Asia Initiative to End Violence Against Children and South Asia Human Rights Foundation. So there are several initiatives that involves organization, civil society organizations, NGOs, which are beyond the government. For example, we are practically operating and are in the process of making a network of South Asian think tanks, which will be another organization that will form part of the SAARC people-oriented activity. So people must again take the lead, and that is the way to go. And I really appreciate, Marufa, your approaches that people can take the initiative, people can take functionaries and make it work again, maybe in a bottoms-up approach. I would now like to acknowledge the presence of our former foreign policy advisor, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmad Chaudhary, and take the benefit of hearing from him the formative years of SAARC because he was a diplomat in the MOFA and he has personal experience on how the concept was mooted and floated by Bangladesh. Dr. Chaudhary, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, General Munir. I should be frightfully remiss, of course, were I not to thank General Munir and Editor Sobhan for inviting me to participate. And hearing so many stimulating remarks by our panelists today, I'm tempted to speak. And as Oscar Wilde has famously said, the only way you can get rid of a temptation is to yield to it. So I will. Munir has invited me to speak to the initial, the beginnings of SAARC, the initiation. Theoretically, the central thrust. It's true, of course, the background, as he said, that it was Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib, and on the 6th of February 1972. I haven't got the papers with me. I've just relocated from Singapore. I've just got this book along, and in this piece there is a reference to that speech of Bangabandhu, and he said that the whole of South Asia must cooperate, otherwise history would not, this is a quote from him, history would not forgive us. Of course, it found shape and fruition during the period of General Zia as president eventually thereafter. And that is when we participated in the formation phases in the ministry under the aegis of Ambassador Farooq Sobhan, who was Director General. There was myself and the Afzalur Rahman, a colleague who now lives in New York, and some others as well. Now, as I said, the central thrust in the jargon of international relations literature was neo-functionalism of SAARC. Now, what is, give me half a minute to explain what neo-functionalism is. It's the idea that building cooperation across a broad spectrum of activities, beginning with innocuous ones, will ease tensions at central levels. So that is the theoretical basis. You cooperate on smaller bits and pieces of possibilities and build, which would reduce tension at more central levels. Now, our inspiration then was, of course, the functionals, neo-functionals were mostly Europeans. There was Ernest Haas, the Jean Monnet, who headed the French planning, and there was David Mitrani. And these neo-functionals were both theoreticians and also practitioners, and the European coal and steel community, which was, I think, set up in 1952, was the frame of reference initially as a target. I also was able to observe the Pacific Forum from my perch at the Australian National University in Canberra, and there were some inputs that you would obviously expect from that. Initially, India and Pakistan, as you have heard, both opposed SAARC. India, of course, because it apprehended a clubbing together of the smaller fellows, and Pakistan because it thought India was too big and would invariably drive the process. Hence, two principles had to be written into the charter, and these form what is known as Article 10 of the Charter. Now, the Article 10 says that SAARC would not discuss or take action on any bilateral or contentious issues, which pretty much, takes away all bilateral issues from SAARC, and all issues would be all decisions would be taken by unanimity, not necessarily consensus. You realize there is a difference between unanimity and consensus. Consensus is an agreement in spirit, but unanimity is a positive agreement on the part of all actors. So the charter laid down through its Article 10 that there would be no contentious or bilateral issues discussed, and no decisions would be taken except by unanimity. So you would think, and it's true, that there was a structural impediment to forward movement, because no contentious issues could be discussed, and no decisions could be taken except in form of unanimity. And yet there was forward movement, and I'll come to that eventually. Remember that those of us around this table who have been in uniform, and many of you have been, would know that no plan survives the first contact with the enemy. You see, when you establish a contact with the other protagonist, your plan evolves, and so did SAARC. Eventually we discovered that the corridors were more important than the chambers. In other words, it was the meeting of the heads of government, the principal players in the governments, and among, as Munir said, among the peoples, which were more important than the conferences, formal conferences within the chambers of the body. Now, so that is how SAARC actually eventually began to evolve. Now, what about the achievements? I shall be brief, of course. Yes, there were achievements. The achievements that South Asia is an idea. The idea of South Asia was a product of SAARC. I spent the last 15 years in what is known as the Institute of South Asian Studies in Singapore, ISAS, in the Singapore National University. There would have been no ISAS but for SAARC. So the idea that that elements in the region, there are elements in the region that unite us, and these are sometimes deeper than those that divide. So that was basically one of the products of SAARC. Before SAARC, formation of SAARC, one looked at the region as a subcontinent. Some called it Indo-Pak subcontinent, some called it the Indian subcontinent. But the idea that we belong to something wider and bigger, and that we were South Asians. We couldn't be BIPSSians. I mean, we were South Asians. So that took root. Secondly, and this is important politically, it strengthened the concept of sovereignty in South Asia. You see, it did not dilute it at some issues. Because it is SAARC which enthused, as if it were, the sense of sovereignty of countries like Bhutan, Maldives. This would not have gathered that kind of strength if it were not for the regular meetings in SAARC where Bhutanese and Maldivians were given the same status, equal status as actors, state actors within the region. Now, you've heard of the problems. I mean, it's some say it's dead, some say it's dying, etc. But it's certainly moribund in ways. So, how can there be forward movement now? Yes, Munir's point that yes, there are people's bodies. There is such a thing as the idea of people's SAARC. I mean, it's driven by peoples. The idea, as I said, that there are elements that unite us are deeper than those that divide. That is a factor. That would have to be the main driving force of this resurgence. The other is taking it out in some ways from the Gordian knot of India-Pakistan relations. Now, can we extricate SAARC from this? Experience will demonstrate that it will be difficult. Yet, there are watershed occasions in history when men have aspired to look to and work towards the triumph of hope over experience. And the idea of reviving SAARC has got to be as surely one such. Thank you.
Dr. Chaudhary, I thank you for your comments. A good experience for all of us to understand how it was formed and how it moved. So I shall now take the privilege of opening the floor. Please ask your questions, make your comments, and please Please be brief so I can accommodate as many as possible. I will start with you, sir, first. Please, I'll start with you. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it's working.
So after hearing these sessions of discussions, I think I want to add some comments. I think actually some issue like why SAARC is there right now, people think about that because there's no further actions from SAARC in the past decades. And the core issue of why it's not active, I think it's money. It's not other things. Why I said so, in 2004, SAARC signed the MOU with ADB. Because back to that time, they have realized there's no such actions from the SAARC side. They need some money to support some activities. Recently, ADB under ADB, there's one program called SAARC for the South Asian Sub-Regional Economic Cooperation. That program is running quite well. And in 2018, the SAARC Secretary General, Mr. Amajad Hossain Sao, he have another meeting refreshed interest to cooperations with ADB again regarding how to foster the partnership with ADB. So I want to go to the core issue is once they have money, they have enough money, they can definitely have more activities. They can also strengthen the presence in the world. That's point one. Point two, during the discussion, we have always discussing about the India's role in SAARC. But people don't understand the status of the member states is different. And also India has its own issue to address. We always say that with the big, you can say, big brothers can always carry more responsibilities. But we also have to look into the picture. I'm not saying that India should not be acting quite actively in SAARC, but they need to address some issues at home at first to presence more and stress more in SAARC role. So that's my comments I want to add. And the final thing is, I think we can also strengthen the partnerships between SAARC and also other MDBs like World Bank, like ADB, even like AIIB. All this actually they're quite willing to support SAARC. From my understanding, because I'm in the infrastructure business, so I do understand there's so many finance facilities which is available from AIIB, from World Bank as well. They can support SAARC to grow further. So that's my comments. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for inviting me. Well, I'll be very brief and I'll say a few words more in the form of observations. I have no question as such. First of all, as you said, in case of in the case of Dr. Zafar Chaudhary, I also had a sort of privilege to be associated with a process of germination of the concept, and also, like two of my colleagues here, we are the same generation of foreign service officers, also involved quite actively in the first SAARC summit. Although none of us, among the three of us, became foreign affairs advisor of an interim government, and I'll make just a few points. First of all, I'm not a great taker of the contention that it's because of India-Pakistan relations that SAARC process has remained stalled. It's remained stalled more in the context of holding summits. Of course, the summits have importance. It gives impetus to the process, to the secretariat's work. I mean, this kind of a seminar would have been more sort of meaningful with a broader-based participation, mostly from the representatives of the embassies of the member countries. We have the Pakistan diplomats here, but nobody from the Indian mission. So I don't think that it all because of India-Pakistan relations. SAARC process has survived hiccups in these bilateral relations between India and Pakistan. It survived Babri Mosque deterioration in relation. It survived Kargil. It survived the Mumbai incidents. So why is it stalled? I mean, can Bangladesh play a role here? I think Bangladesh has, if not a moral responsibility, some kind of an enlightened responsibility to try to reinitiate the process of convening the summit. In that case, one problem that we have in Bangladesh that we don't really have a bipartisan approach to foreign policy matters. I mean, do both the major parties have same kind of approach to the issue of SAARC? I think that is an issue here. I mean, that might have possibly held back a possible re-initiative by Bangladesh towards convening SAARC in a meaningful way. And although I mean, I draw this from my own experience that although there is a provision that in the SAARC Charter that the member countries will not discuss contentious issues, but I do recall here the 2004 summit in Islamabad, where at that time I was the Bangladesh High Commissioner. That summit also resulted in Islamabad Declaration between Pakistan and India, the famous Islamabad Accord. So the SAARC summits do provide the opportunity, the forum, even for discussing contentious issues. So all that is required is some kind of initiative, and possibly Bangladesh could take some initiative here. Thank you.
Thank you. Lieutenant General Zahir.
I think revising SAARC has two villains. One is a doctrine, another is an issue. The doctrine that has been enunciated on the wake of war on terror, that if you are not with us or with me, you are with the enemy or them. This doctrine is still in play, as we see in Ukraine, and we see that same doctrine in play in Southeast Asia. Sorry, South Asia. The other issue is the Kashmir issue. Whenever we say Pakistan-India relation, it boils down to Kashmir. And that's a stumbling block. And all others can be solved. But this issue, which cannot be solved. So the first one is difficult, the doctrine. It is in vogue. It is ongoing. If states can really come out of this and have the right to choose and also have the right to be neutral, if this is not brought back, I think we're in great difficulty. About Kashmir issue, some say it is not resolvable, but I, as a Commander of National Defense College back in 2005 and 6, tried through Mr. Ikram Saigal, who is a Pakistani strategist, he is a resource person in NDC, Bangladesh, and we talked. And even this went through to President Musharraf, that we suggested a moratorium, a ceasefire and moratorium on Kashmir for 10 to 15 years. And such thing has been tried, like we have seen in the case of Sudan and South Sudan. There was a moratorium like this, and although the outcome was separation, but then here the outcome could have been different. And Pakistan was in a way amenable to this idea, but then this did not progress. Why I'm saying this here, that rest of the country of SAARC, including Bangladesh, should push both India and Pakistan to have a moratorium, to freeze this issue for at least 10 to 15 years and set it aside and move forward, SAARC. So my comments from the panelists.
Thank you, General Munir, for inviting me to this forum. Just a couple of brief comments, if I may. I was involved with the 1985 SAARC summit a little bit, and I wanted to touch a couple of points here. Despite all the misgivings that India and Pakistan had at the launching, it was still able to take off. The summit was able to take off. And bilateral contentious issues were discussed at the very first summit. The mechanism that was developed by Bangladesh at the time, and Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry was there, will remember perhaps, others were, my colleagues were there as well, was to take them out for a retreat on a ship in the middle of the river so that the heads of the governments could speak to each other freely and frankly without the presence of the media. And that did happen. So India and Sri Lanka came to an agreement. India later on sent forces to Sri Lanka, which had disastrous effect afterwards, but nevertheless it was discussed during the retreat in the first SAARC summit. The other issue that General Zahir just referred to was Kashmir. And at the first SAARC summit, each of the 7 heads of state and government were about to cancel stamps on the first SAARC summit. 2 stamps for each country. At the very last minute, the Indians came to us, there was a core group, and the Indians came to us and said, we can't cancel these stamps. Why? Because one of Pakistan's stamps has shown Kashmir as a whole as a part of Pakistan. So for a moment it seemed that the summit will be disrupted, everybody will go home and nothing will happen, the declaration, the charter will not be signed, etc., etc. So it was a moment of great tension. How do you bell the cat to tell General Ishaq that this is going to be cancelled, and how does the summit progress further? The responsibility was put on Ambassador Farooq Chaudhry and Ambassador Shafi Sami, because they were the chief coordinator and the coordinators of the summit. And they went and informed General Ishaq, and General Ishaq said, go and inform the Pakistan President, Mr. Ziaul Haq, General Ziaul Haq. So they both went there. I know because I tagged along as a part of the core group. General Zia was very magnanimous. He said, koi baat nahi, I'll just cancel one stamp and the others can do the regular cancellation of the 2 stamps. So that happened. And the summit concluded peacefully without breaking out into a war. What was missed at the time was that these stamps were being cancelled at both ends here in Dhaka, by the heads of state and government, and at the capitals at the same time. And happily, Pakistan cancelled both its stamps because they didn't know what was happening here. So, there are ways of getting over these obstacles, many, many ways. The most important issue, I think, the bull in the China shop, is political instability in each of our countries, member countries. That is what is hindering SAARC. Not the people's will, not the will of the functionaries. It is possible to take off SAARC. It is not dead. It's not going to be buried. And I have full confidence that it will be revived sooner or later. But before that, just to remind people that we often hear the comparison between ASEAN and SAARC. If I remember correctly, ASEAN slept like a dragon for nearly 25 years. It didn't move. It did not actually start functioning until and unless Indonesia became a democratic country. With the first elections of Indonesia, the political elections of Indonesia, that's when ASEAN started moving. I was based in Indonesia at the time, and I saw the movement, and it was interesting how all countries coalesced together. But let us remember that all of them were by then established democracies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for reminding about the cruise, because on the staff of Gelmanap, we were the persons who prepared the cruise, and we set sail. I was on board the cruise, so I remember how heads of states can really relax and behave without the presence of the media. And they're completely different animals at that time. And Ambassador Shamim, I thank you for reminding us that all the SAARC member countries should have been here. I can assure you that we invited all our colleagues from all SAARC member countries. We did, and we reached out to all of them in addition to sending cards and emails. So we are thankful we have the presence of at least the Nepalese DCM. We have the presence of our diplomatic friends from Pakistan. We had the confirmation from the Maldives ambassador, maybe she got busy somewhere, but we did reach out to the Indian High Commission a number of times. Perhaps it was uninteresting for them to be present here. Also reflects their attitude towards SAARC, and that's how it stands. So I will go back to you, sir. You wanted the floor? No. Mr. Janzeb? Yes.
Thank you very much, General Sobhan. First of all, let me thank you for organizing this session, and I thank all the panelists for their very insightful and enlightening views. I acknowledge the presence of Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhary, Ambassador Naseem, and all our distinguished panelists here who have spoken before me. So first and foremost, as a founding member, Pakistan attaches immense importance to SAARC, and I think we acknowledge the role and vision of Bangladeshi leadership in coming up with the idea of SAARC and for forging the efforts towards South Asian regional identity. In many ways, Pakistan agrees with the views which have been expressed here, that SAARC's failure to make any headway can be attributed to the lack of genuine political will to promote regional cooperation. And as Pakistan has consistently maintained, casting shadow of bilateral problems on the regional body undermines not only the charter of the organization, but also the SAARC spirit, which has also been mentioned by Dr. Iftikhar. On its part, Pakistan attaches importance to regional cooperation and has made serious efforts to resolve all bilateral issues in a peaceful and amicable manner, including the core issue of Kashmir, which has been referred to by a number of speakers before me, and which we believe is essential to promoting and achieving lasting and durable peace and prosperity in the region. Now, we believe that simply condemning or discarding SAARC, or for that matter any regional body in any region, and trying to promote exclusivist approaches to regional cooperation only amounts to addressing the symptoms without tackling the root cause. And what is the root cause? I think perhaps you've heard a number of speakers mentioning that it is a lack of genuine political will and sincerity of purpose to promote regional cooperation and to prioritize these objectives over bilateral contentious issues. And I think here I would like to refer to the comments which have been made by our speaker, one of our panelists, that here the quality of leadership matters a lot, and I think that has also been the incident and the anecdote which has been mentioned by Ambassador Naseem as well, which shows that the quality of leadership, if it comes to that level, to set aside bilateral contentious issues to achieve a higher objective, I think that matters a lot. So where do we stand now? I think serious introspection is needed on the part of SAARC member states. How do they wish to take forward this process of regional cooperation, or whether they want to do that or not? Pakistan shares the disappointment felt by other SAARC member states over the state of affairs. However, we are not pessimistic about the future, which would be tantamount to undermining and questioning the vision of the founding fathers of this regional body. Now, despite all this talk of paralysis and dysfunction, we believe that new and emerging challenges confronting the region have opened up space for cooperation amongst regional countries. South Asia is home to over 1/5 of the global population. It is in proximity to an emerging global power, very dynamic human resource, youth population, and it is one of the most vulnerable regions to climate change. And growing incidents of climate-induced disasters could lead to rising sea levels, water and food insecurity, and all these challenges which have been mentioned by a number of speakers here. So we believe that SAARC can play a key role in responding to the impacts of extreme climate events, which are induced by climate and other natural calamities. And according to experts, I think the future prosperity of South Asia would depend on how well we deal with these climate challenges. So are the regional states up to this challenge? I think this is the question we should be asking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would also like to recall that SAARC was one of the regional bodies that identified the climate change challenges and environmental cooperation way back in 2010, way before many other countries did any structural cooperation on these fields. But whatever we have created so far, we have tremendous potential that we should reap out of this. So I shall go back to Ambassador Shahid, please.
Thank you, General. As you mentioned that you were with General Munaf when the SAARC summit was going on, and he played a very vital role. I think it's good to to remind that he also played a very important role in cementing the SAARC. And Ambassador Naseem Firdaus also talked about, as we were, well associated at that time, to go back at that period. It's all the memory that fades away after some time. But I think these are all human memories is a very important, not only from the archives. Like to thank and recognize our very distinguished, eminent Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry. I think his elder brother Farooq Chaudhry was a very important element during that SAARC. And he has passed, but we all remember his contribution, as well as Safi Shami. He also played a very important, because this is a difficult time to hold the first SAARC summit. I was here as a director of program planning. I was losing jobs. I was about to be sacked every day. Something was going wrong. Well, I'll not touch on all those things. Those are all history. But let me say, as you rightly mentioned, that there's so many bodies which are quite active within the SAARC. So much so, the other day I did not attend that, but the SAARC Ladies Forum in Dhaka is very active. So much so that they had a whole day program, and it was very widely, represented by all the SAARC countries. So you see, that's going on. To say that SAARC is dead, as you open the sentence, which is little, concerned with question marks, of course. But I think question of reviving, it's not the question that India and Pakistan don't see eye to eye with everything. But I would say over here that in the Shanghai Forum, India and Pakistan are sitting together. And many other, I can't go back, but there are many other forums where India and Pakistan, they discuss many things. And as Shamim and Naseem mentioned, Ambassador Naseem mentioned, that I think it's not the differences between India and Pakistan that is blocking the SAARC. But I think Bangladesh, I remember at that time one of the foreign secretaries, who is no more, he became a very important finance minister. And I remember I was a junior officer. His opening remarks was that every region in the world has a body that represents all the countries. And the South Asia was missing, and today we are very proud that we have this SAARC, and we have laid the foundation of the SAARC. And we feel very privileged, being at that time very junior officers in the ministry, that Bangladesh has contributed. So much so, I think Bangladesh has also contributed. Nobody is going to talk about it. That's history now. But I think we were pushing for the SAARC headquarters also in Dhaka. It doesn't happen. It has to go by as Dr. Zafar very nicely gave the difference. We all mix up with all the words, the difference between unanimity and consensus. So you see, it happened. It didn't work out for Bangladesh, but we have the BIPSS headquarters where Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry was the advisor, and that time he laid the foundation. And I happened to be very closely associated while I was posted abroad with SAARC, with the BIPSS. BIPSS is a body which only can complement, and it can supplement, but it cannot be an alternate to SAARC. SAARC has its own, as we all agreed, to have its own locus standi to function. Like all of that, Naseem very nicely mentioned, for 25 years the ASEAN was nobody knew about ASEAN, and people were worried how would Myanmar, how would Laos, how would many other countries become members, but they all became members of the ASEAN. And so we can have the interconnectivity relationship with these bodies, but SAARC, it has so much of, you said there are 9 observers, all giants, the European Union, the Americas, the China, and many other countries you mentioned. So you see, SAARC has potential. So Bangladesh, I think we have the ability to move forward in this area. I would end over here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You mentioned that about the observer countries. The 9 observer countries are all the powerhouses in the world. And maybe SAARC should find out some mechanism how to activate more activities from the observers to revive the process of the SAARC process. May I now go back to the DCM Nepalese Embassy?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting the embassy and me to this beautiful event. Actually, it's high time we spoke about this topic, and thank you for bringing up this topic. I was very reluctant about speaking here because most of the things were covered by the speakers and the eminent guest present here. But then I had memories with regard to SAARC, so maybe I could speak, and because I also represent Nepal here, maybe it's time as a civil servant of Nepal, I reaffirm the commitment of Nepal with regard to reviving and revitalizing SAARC. So I joined Nepal's Foreign Service back in 2010, and SAARC division was one of the first divisions I was affiliated with. And during that time, SAARC was still a vibrant organization. The sectoral meetings were going quite well. The summits were happening. There was a sort of momentum going on during that time. But you know the fate the SAARC has, SAARC has gone through. So, and I think still there is immense love and goodwill among the peoples in SAARC countries, and I think that has kept the SAARC intact. I disagree that SAARC is dead, because it is there, and being a host nation of the SAARC Secretariat, I would have to say that SAARC is very much there, though not functional, not up to the mark as it had to be. But I think SAARC as an organization for Nepal is very important. We attach high importance to SAARC. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your commitment. We appreciate that. We'll go back to you, sir. Ambassador.
Mr. President, thank you for giving me the floor. I am not so pessimistic that SAARC is dead. If you just take the history of European Union, how many years it took? First, European Coal and Steel Union, then Jean Monnet gave the idea in 1957, then Customs Union, Common Currency, European Foreign Policy. So I think we'll have to have a patience. Of course, we are upset. I was also involved along with my other colleagues in 1985, first SAARC summit when SAARC was born. And I agree with you. You said in your opening speech that SAARC has undertaken many initiatives, and I think that's from that where we should take SAARC up, like SAARC food security, SAARC energy cooperation, SAARC regional connectivity, and also as recently as COVID-19. This provided a wonderful opportunity for SAARC countries to take common initiative to tackle this COVID pandemic. And it is rightly so that Bangladesh can take initiative to revive SAARC. It takes time. We must not be impatient, you know. And I hope that SAARC would again, though SAARC Charter prohibits contentious issues, but it doesn't preclude other issues, other opportunities like sub-regional initiative. And I hope Bangladesh can take some initiative to revive the SAARC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I would also like to remind everybody that there are 12 regional centers of SAARC that are established throughout the SAARC region, and they are functional, they are operational. There are 2 in Bangladesh, for example. Many of you may not have heard the name. There is a SAARC Agricultural Center in Dhaka. There is also a SAARC Meteorological Research Center, which is located in Bangladesh. There are 10 other centers spread across the South Asian region, and many of these centers are functioning well. So there is a lot that is happening below the summit level, and those are the flickers of hope that we must rekindle. Brigadier Azaz, you have the floor next.
Thank you, sir. Sir, my question and the comment is regarding reviving of SAARC. I agree with the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Tawhid, that actually the border issues and the line of control. Sir, I had an opportunity when I was serving as a defense advisor in Islamabad. We were taken to the line of control, the border area. I was present there for 2 hours. And I have seen standing in the line of control on the Pakistan side, and we could see what is happening on the Indian side also. So the border issue, and we have also visited this United Nations Observer Mission in Islamabad, and we asked them different questions. And this mission, Observer Mission in the Islamabad regarding India-Pakistan relationship, is prevailing for more than 50 years. So, sir, this problem is a remote chance that India-Pakistan relationship on Kashmir will be, or the border issue will be resolved very soon. But the effort should be on that keeping this relationship, how much we can promote the reviving of SAARC. First of all, sir, the main role has to be played by, as far as I understand, this India and Pakistan, and more focusedly the Indian should take the lead. And secondly, the leadership which has got good relationship with these 2 countries, good relationships, sir, who can approach, if they are allowed to approach, they can take an initiative to revive the SAARC from the life support or to whatever state it is there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Just to get back to your questions here, that the South Asian University is already established in New Delhi. There is a campus that has been established, but the Indian government, I understand, has now given a larger campus area where a new campus will be built in future. The new idea that has been floated is not to have a single campus, but spread the different schools and the different campuses in all South Asian countries. And I think that is an excellent idea, and if that materializes, then it becomes more dynamic.
Sir, thank you very much. I've heard the diplomats, and I would like to congratulate for their optimistic view. But since I come from the military background, I'm a little bit pessimistic. Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry, sir, you had mentioned about SAARC is not dead, it is moribund. Being dead is better than being moribund, because dead, they never come back. Being moribund, they may resuscitate themselves in disconcerting apparitions. I have read this book, Jaishankar's India Way, what is the present state of SAARC, and he has not contributed much to the SAARC chapter in his book. Now, how does Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, and in fact, if you read his book, he is recollecting the Indian mythology, like say, for example, Krishna's choice, or from the ancient Indian lore, which says that probably the current Indian leadership looks at the continent in a different manner. This is first point. But it is extremely important that India's leadership has to be extremely effective, because it is in the center and it is so powerful, and we have talked about the asymmetric power. From that point of view, we must also accept Indian leadership, but what kind of leadership that India will provide to this region is important. That has to be benign. I'm just talking from, what do you call it, from realist point of view, and you have also talked about new functionalism, which is very important. We should overcome the, first of all, small little issues, and then reach up to the bigger ones. Just take the example of Pakistan's appointment of the Chief of Army Staff. Now, I was watching the Indian televisions, and there were many think tanks which came up, in fact, commenting on the appointment of General Asim Munir as the next Chief of Army Staff. I was very surprised. Indians won't even talk so much about the appointment of their own army chief. And it was very disconcerting, as if the Indians are more concerned and apprehensive of Indian army chief rather than their political issues. I mean, this is the mindset. When you are treating Pakistan army as an enemy of yours, not the state itself. So this mindset has to change. I would rather say that having so many economic forum or say cultural forum, we ought to have a defense forum also, in order to create a sense of respect for each other as military organizations and institutions. This is second point. Third point is that there are external actors also. China is there. United States of America is there. They all have eyes on us. And the most important in that regard is the role what Bangladesh plays. If Bangladesh cannot come closer to Pakistan, because Pakistan is an important element, this SAARC will not simply revive. This SAARC will not simply revive. One of the most important, concepts that promotes regional harmony is the respect for each other. And the third, final thing I would say that it is extremely a challenging task, not only for the common people, probably who are more concerning towards SAARC coming up as a regional body, but from historical point of view, SAARC as a concept which has been proposed by Bangladesh, which was in fact Bangladesh being the founding father of SAARC's concept, it's sometimes should feel to us that it is a historical anachronism also, because challenges are very high in that case. Had the region intended to remain integrated, then possibly in 1947 we would not have got disintegrated. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Rusht, please. Zaid, I'm coming to you next. Yeah, it's working.
So many, say, complicated issues and complicated thinking. Probably our heads are clogged by this time. SAARC is dead, inna lillah. But it is not that. Just this month, I just go for the lighter portion of this issue. Just this month, me and my wife, we visited India, and we went to see the Red Fort. There were a few rows for the entry fees. There were counters for the locals, for the foreigners. I went to the foreigners counter, and it was written 500 rupees. And for the locals, it was only 35 rupees. You see, 465 rupees more for the foreigners. I presented my passport, and the guy said, you're from Bangladesh, so you go to the local counter. For SAARC, it is 35. So who says SAARC is dead? I could save 465 rupees, and my wife also 465. You just add it up. 14.28% more for the foreigners. So, and now there are so many ambassadors here. I give one of my personal experience as a reporter. In 2005, I was a diplomatic correspondent of a highly circulated news daily. And that time, SAARC was scheduled to be held here. My uncle-in-law, Mr. Anwarul Alam, he was there in the foreign ministry. Probably he was the second senior most after Mr. Shamsher Mobin Chaudhary. But I never used to go to his office or ask for any sort of information because of some intricacies. I want to avoid that. So when the SAARC summit was scheduled, that time Mr. Morshed Khan, who was the foreign minister, he held for a press conference. And probably before 2 or 3 days, he told us and other person, Mr. Shamsher Mobin, that yes, everything is settled. We just talked to the Indian Foreign Secretary, and it is nothing to be worried. Okay, fine. I went back to my office and made the report accordingly. And probably at 8 at night, my advisor, editor, who was a very renowned journalist and once a minister also, he was a veteran politician also. He called me at his office and showed some report of Indian news daily, The Hindu. It came in their internet as a online part, a very small portion. that the India might not join the SAARC summit. Some sources say this, blah, blah, blah. I said, so what? It's just a little bit report. And he said, my advisory editor said, no, there are some kitchen cabinet and something behind the door, and the Hindu, this newspaper, they represent that inner circle, the South Bloc. Just write a report that SAARC summit is not going to held. I said, what the hell? But I had to comply with, and I wrote the report accordingly. Next day it was 7-column lead, I think. And from the morning, everybody started jumping on us. There were so many phone calls from the foreign ministry, from the intelligence agencies, from this and that. Even my uncle-in-law, he called me, what the hell have you done? This is going to happen. Have you gone mad? So I got somehow puzzled. I went to the press club, and and all my colleagues, they bounced on me, said, what have you done, Mr. Roost? And I said, okay, fine, let's wait and see. And we were watching TV at the lounge. Probably at 12 or 12:30, there was a scroll, breaking news, SAARC summit is cancelled. I just made myself comfortable that my report turned to be true. So what Aishapa was, why I narrated this, Aishapa was telling that some quarter they don't want that SAARC should go ahead, say peacefully or say in a right way. Yes, there are some quarter beneath the carpet, which we do not know. But another thing is that there are non-state actors. During 2016 SAARC summit, which was held in Islamabad, so far I can recollect, the India didn't participate. They blamed that there was Uri attack, the terror attack, and India said that they blamed Pakistan. And before that, they blamed Pakistan for Mumbai attack also in 2008. And Pakistan also blames India for their involvement, alleged involvement for the Baloch Liberation Army or the insurgency in Balochistan. So these are the non-state actors. I think we should consider this thing also.
Okay, we are coming closer to the closure, so please be very, very brief. We'll have two questions. The second last question is from Zahid, and then the last question will go back to our friends, young friends, or students from the university. You would have the last question before we go back to the panelists for their comments. Zahid, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Just a very quick sort of comments and questions together. I hope I'm Dr. Zahid Khan. I'm a reader of politics and international relations. So just a couple of contradictions that I see here, which seems to be addressed, and also to be raised, the right questions needs to be raised. First, we do have a country which says neighborhood first is their foreign policy. It doesn't sit well when you have a neighborhood first policy and then SAARC is dead. So then we need to start investigating what does neighborhood first means and what is its ultimate objective. That is the first thing that needs to be. Second, I think the audience and particularly the Excellence Ambassador has very poignantly pointed out that SAARC has survived many such controversies. But then the question, the right question as a PhD researcher, I always focus on what is the right question. The right question is, what has changed since 2014? And that is a manageable question that we should ask. And then the subsection of that question would be, what has changed internally and externally? And just to give a few pointers on that line is, internally we see a political system which feeds onto pro or against India or Pakistan. That narrative prevailed and that has dominated. So you always have a pro or against Pakistan lobbying or narrative to survive in a political landscape. It is not as much as about the money. So the cognitive, which some of the panelists have rightly pointed out, has been, I know corrupt would be a very strong word, but has been molded into that sort of narrative. Externally, if you see, India is looking outside. It is chairing the G20 group, SCO presidency, Afro-Asian meeting will happen next year. So what is the incentive for India to look inward, to have SAARC alive? So these are the questions that needs to be probably more accurately asked within the time frame of what has changed. That would probably make it more arriving at more particularly realistic solutions. And I'll end with one example and one realistic example. What happens, how the South Asian countries will, for example, respond if there is a large oil spill in the Bay of Bengal? There is no alternative for the South Asian countries to come to in some sort of compact, global compact, to address the issue of attribution and also compensation from the perpetrator who has done that. Because the waves do not know the geographic boundary, it will affect all the South Asian countries if that kind of natural disaster happen. So the talks are okay, and we can always romanticize about what has happened in the past, but we need to be focused on what has changed particularly, and do we continue to contribute in subscribing to the change which takes this SAARC to remain dead forever. Thank you.
Thank you. The last question from one of our friends from the university.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I am Musaddiq Ahmed from East West University. Initially, SAARC was established to perform regional cooperation, but now we can see SAARC is no longer suitable for regional development and cooperation. Dr. Marfa ma'am discussed about the objective of SAARC. My question to Marfa Akhtar ma'am, as a student, I just want to know what are the effective steps taken by the members of SAARC in recent past to achieve the objection of SAARC? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I did not intend to take the floor, but I think Rustab has mentioned an issue which I believe I had to respond. Let me reiterate Pakistan's position on some of the issues. Pakistan, like I mentioned, has always been forthcoming in discussing all bilateral issues, including the issue of Kashmir, which we believe remains the core issue between the two largest countries in the region, and not only in a bilateral setting, but also multilateral. And it goes without saying that Kashmir remains today one of the longest standing issue on the agenda of the Security Council, with 11 Security Council resolutions which call for the resolution of this conflict in line with the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So let me reiterate, Pakistan has always been forthcoming and has not shied away from dialogue on any issue. So this is just a brief comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for your extremely pertinent and very valuable comments and questions. We shall now go back to our panelists for their final comments and replies. So, Tawhid, I can start with you.
Anyway, thank you. Just to say, just to share a little bit of optimism that has been expressed by most of the commentators and the panelists also. My presentation was largely pessimistic, I know, but the optimism is that the people actually want much more connectivity, much more togetherness than maybe our political bosses are allowing us to. Who doesn't want to travel without any hindrance within this region? I am sure that all Indians, all Pakistanis, all Bangladeshis would like to have that, but our politicians won't allow that because they have their own agenda for their own survival, for their own benefits. But I think that Bangladesh can certainly start an initiative to resuscitate SAARC. I would say that when India, because of some reasons, refused to go for the Pakistan summit in Pakistan, very quickly we supported the Indian position. I don't think it was necessary because even one abstention, as per the charter, says that the summit will not take place. So we could have stayed silent. I think that would have been more prudent, but unfortunately we jumped into the bandwagon very quickly. This was not necessary. I think Bangladesh should take an initiative along with other smaller countries, and try to revive the SAARC activities. It's good that some of the activities are going on despite the fact that there is no summit. I think I'll just make that comment and stop here.
Thank you. Aisha?
I just want a brief comment. Ambassador Nasim was saying how comfortable you are without the media around. Well, the media is here. And so I want to make a bit of an uncomfortable comment. And the media get people into trouble, they get themselves into trouble. So let me get myself into trouble. We're speaking about the underlying feeling we had is about India resisting a revival of SAARC. But what about us? Let us be introspective. And someone around the table might have mentioned about, leaning towards India or leaning towards Pakistan. But other than that, in our internal politics, every time there's a change of government, there's a change of policy or change of mindset. So someone else mentioned about the importance of leadership. So when we speak about SAARC, I'm glad that you had mentioned about even before Zia Rahman, perhaps Bangabandhu, they had a sort of vision, a South Asian vision, and you mentioned how it was President Zia who was, the founder of the vision of SAARC. So what happens, the problem with SAARC within our country is that when we say SAARC, we tend to always see it as a brainchild of President Zia, which is true, but then when a different government comes in power, they don't want to accept it. And so then SAARC has got some sort of negativity towards them. So if we could promote this idea that it's also, it's a it's an idea that is generated from Bangladesh, so that no government who comes will try to negate it or take it, okay, everyone should have an ownership. Everyone should be the owner of SAARC. They shouldn't feel that, oh, it was not our idea, so it's not ours. It's a brainchild of Bangladesh.
Thank you. Marufa?
I think I will also again reiterate these three points that already Tauhid sir and Aisha ma'am mentioned. Along with this, I would still talk about one respected participants also raised the money issues and also say that talking about the South Asian universities revival, and which actually I was pointing out when I mentioned cognitive society. I mentioned also the donor agencies, the think tank, the universities, the civil society. They should play a big role. If they come together and raise a voice and become a voice of the people, and then also try to convince the states, maybe at one point states will find out the mutual benefits, which is more larger than the contentious national interest. Of course, national interest in the international relations is the most important, become more important at this moment, but still I want to be very pessimistic when we look at the climate change problems, which is more larger than even bilateral issues. When we look at the food security, we do have a food bank. SAARC, under the SAARC, there's a food bank which is not operating. Maybe this is the time when the whole world is going to face the food insecurity, could be a pivotal to revive the SAARC again. And there is a question, one of the students raised the question, I think today we all spoke about what the achievement. There are a lot of achievement. Muniruzzaman sir also talked about 9 centers, multiple conventions, and also, as I mentioned, food bank, agriculture, nutrition, conventions. There were conventions on disaster management, coastal zone management. So there are a lot of development happening. So what the point we are just talking about today, that those are not effectively working. So maybe this is the time to talk about this functionalist approach, and then for reviving and the leadership. Definitely in every negotiations, even if you look into the international climate change, the Paris Agreement, why it was successful, because of the diplomatic efforts during the conventions, during the meeting. So I think we need to cultivate more on how to become successful and bypass those contentious issues and bring all the leaders put together at the same table.
Thank you. Let me now go to the final segment, an important segment. I go and hand over the microphone to my co-host, Mr. Zafar Sobhan, for his final comments.
Thank you, General, and thank you all of you who have taken the time to be with us today. I think there's been a lot of consensus, if not unanimity, around this table when we discuss the fact that while SAARC has become moribund and largely non-functional, that neither is it dead nor can it be allowed to die. And I think that is a platform upon which we can move forward from. And I think specifically it's been mentioned around this table that Bangladesh has a very strong role to play here as the progenitor of SAARC and also as one of the major economies in the major countries of SAARC, that our interest in SAARC functioning as a regional entity, as a community, is extremely strong. And we've mentioned before, to talk of the elephant in the room, that, the fundamental problem SAARC has faced in terms of its functionality is the hostility between India and Pakistan. But this is something which, isn't really or ought not really to be much of an issue with Bangladesh. Bangladesh enjoys cordial and good relations with both these countries, as we enjoy cordial and good relations with all of our other SAARC neighbors. And so the fact that there may be hostility between India and Pakistan shouldn't necessarily be something that that stands in Bangladesh's way as a country for reaching out to forge connections and seek advantages regionally and within the community. I think it's very important, what a number of the speakers have mentioned, is that we shouldn't look at SAARC and think of it as being something which has achieved nothing. It has been stated and demonstrated by many of the speakers here that SAARC has many achievements to its credit. Right from its inception, I think General Munir was the first person who pointed it out, that when you talk about issues of climate change in the environment, in fact, SAARC was ahead of the game. It was, this is now, the sort of the hot button issue in terms of the world. But, a decade ago, SAARC was ahead of the game, talking about how we needed to address issues such as these from a regional and not a national perspective. And we've also learned about a lot of 12 regional SAARC centers in work which is happening. You mentioned agriculture, you've mentioned food security, sort of under the surface. And so I think that also gives us hope that SAARC can continue to operate. And I think one point which many of the speakers, not just the panelists have made, but the speakers here as well, is that at a person-to-person level, there's a great deal of interest. So we may have problems state to state, but I think it's important to look at the issue of SAARC from a person-to-person perspective. And I think the desire for closer ties, the desire for closer cooperation certainly exists in every country, including India and Pakistan, when it comes, if we look at how does the citizenry of these countries feel about the issue. And I think in conclusion, there are just a couple of points. One is we do also have to look at the issue of internal politics, and I think this has been a point made by a number of the speakers. Right now, when we talk about SAARC being moribund, and then you talk about, you contrast it to earlier, happier periods in terms of cooperation, 80s, 90s, 2000s. What has changed? And this is a question which was brought up. What has changed is internal politics inside countries. And, and of course, internal politics matter. SAARC is going to be a political football. In Bangladesh, it's a political football. This is, as Aisha mentioned, it's also a political football, of course, in India and Pakistan and in every country. This is the way of politics. This is the way of the world. But politics change. Interests change. Alignments change. Things grow. Things evolve. And the fact that at this particular moment in time, or in the last decade, the internal politics of various countries were such that it seemed as though it made it very challenging for SAARC to move forward and be effective, does not mean that in the future, in the coming years and decades, that will be the case. The example of ASEAN was brought is a regional entity which was very unpromising and very moribund for some decades, and is now moving forward and with great effectiveness. So that also can be an example for us and a reason not to lose hope. I love the Ambassador Chaudhry had mentioned neo-functionalism, and I think that could be a real intelligent way for us to move forward in really starting to get SAARC to become more functional. Look at the small things, the little things where we can work together, and maybe, we put the big issues on the back burner, understanding that they may be too contentious, they may be too controversial, but slowly we address smaller issues, build confidence, and then before you know it, actually a platform has been created to solve even larger issues. And in conclusion, I think we've also talked about other regional agglomerations such as BIPSS, but we all agree while BIPSS is important, it can at best be a complementary force to SAARC. It cannot replace SAARC. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this, but the fundamental reason, and this is something we've talked about, is that South Asia does exist as a cognitive community. It does exist as an idea. We all understand what South Asia means. We all understand why there's a divide between South Asia and Southeast Asia. I don't think there is any argument or controversy about the idea that South Asia does exist, is an entity, is a place. And for that reason alone, if not for the other reasons, that's why we have to continue to develop South Asia and South Asian cooperation. And finally, when we talk about why we need this regional cooperation, it's simply because in the year 2022, and this has always been the case, but as the world becomes more interconnected, as our problems and challenges become more interconnected, so many of the challenges we face, so many of the problems we face as nations, as people, can only be solved at a regional level. If we, at a regional level, if we talk about issues of security, if we talk about issues of water, if we talk about issues of climate change, if we talk about our place in the world with respect to geopolitical challenges and geopolitical tensions, it is imperative that we address all of these issues together as a region. In fact, it is not possible for us to address them in any other way. And for all of these reasons, I think SAARC will continue to live, and while it may be on life support, I, for one, am hopeful and confident that we will be able to revive and resuscitate it. And as I said, and if I could conclude, we need to revive and resuscitate it because there really is no alternative. Thank you.
Zafar, I thank you for your very pertinent concluding remarks and comments. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us for the last 2 hours to talk on an issue which is extremely important but has not been talked much in Bangladesh or in other capitals. But we really want to bring the topic back to the table because it is important for South Asia, it's important for people of South Asia, and it's important for regional stability and international stability. Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today for their extremely valuable comments and remarks. And here we conclude and invite you to join us for a cup of coffee outside. Thank you.